Wasted money on cures. Forgot how to fix myself. They say that time is free. Then why is it so precious? Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. Time is running out. Time is running out. Lately I've lost my track. I've sailed the deepest seas, hoping to find something to bring back better times. Oh, I'll say memories in my head, like Polaroids on walls. They remind you to look ahead. But time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running. Time is running out. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over. They can't be over now. Time is running out. What if my best days are over? They can't be over now. Time is running out. Time is running out. Time is running out.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 10th in our series of daily revision sessions. We're going all the way through to the exams. We ain't finishing yet. So the revision sessions will continue. We like the 11:30 slot. Lots of people can join us. And if you're watching live, first of all, press like, because we beat business studies yesterday. Quite easily, actually, if truth be told. And also, you need to be subscribed to the channel to contribute to the chat window. We have an amazing group of students, so motivated, so knowledgeable, and they often help with questions. So there might be a question. We're doing supply side economics today and policies. So keep an eye on the chat window. There's some incredible answers come through. And we try and just showcase some of them with our production team on the screen. So I am fresh from a massive win for Harrogate Town last night. We beat Grimsby Town. Haven't yet seen the Champions League highlights, so please don't tell me the scores. Welcome, everybody. If you're watching on catch up, just press that pause button whenever you want to take a moment to think about a question or grab some context from the presentation. And this presentation will be available for download just a few minutes after we finish. Now, there's a little change to the start today. Let's look at something called the big reveal. So I've chosen a country with a pretty good supply side. There's a clue. And so I'm going to give you 5 clues, and you're only allowed 1 go each, by the way. Let's put a little wider into the chat window. So which economy is this? It's ranked, by the way, some people already started answering before the first clue, which is quite impressive. It's ranked 5th in the latest World Competitiveness Ranking. We'll showcase the first correct answer that comes through. Kieran says Germany. Kieran, you're out. It's home to the largest seaport in the European Union. So that, I'm not great at geography, but that rules out South Korea and Indonesia and Brazil. The third clue has a GDP capita well in excess of the UK. We're at 48,000. They have 73,000. and it's the 15th highest in the world. Do we have the right answer? Fourth clue coming up on the screen here. Yep, so we may have, it's the 6th biggest exporter of goods in the world, including oil and pharmaceuticals. And the 5th clue is a football one, the sports one. The top soccer club was created in 1913, just a year before the Great War, for workers of the local electronics factory. Can somebody give me the name of the club? It is the Netherlands. Well done, everybody. And I think Jim pointed out the first person to get it right on the screen. What is the name of the club? Kirsty, congratulations to you on that. And the aim is, the club is not Ajax. What is the name of the club? You'll remember it once we tell you it. It's not Feyenoord. Everybody feverishly searching on Google for this. It's PSV, Philips, the electronics company. PSV Eindhoven, of course. The Netherlands. Really good example of a country whose supply side is pretty good. Let's move on to the bubble quiz. So I've got three bubble quiz questions for you, all to do with supply side economics. So the number of answers that are correct can range from nothing or 0 to all 4. So here's the first question. This is quite challenging. Which of these countries are in the top 10 in the world for research and development spending, R&D, measured as a percentage of their GDP? Now, how many of these are correct? So in the chat window, post please the how many answers you think are right. So if you think it's all 4, just put A, B, C, D. If you think it's just B or B and C, post it in the chat window. So Teddy, our head of school, says B, C, D. Victor says A, B, C. Anna says B and D. Tommy. Harrison says B, C, D. These look like my forecast grades, A-level, B, C, D. Cameron goes for B and D. And Jennifer says A, C, D. A lot of you are choosing D. Here's the right answer coming up. This is A, B, and C. Belgium, South Korea, and Sweden. South Korea is actually 2nd, Sweden 3rd. China is not in the top 10 in the world for R&D. As a share of GDP, of course, they typically manufacture things. They aren't to get to high income states. They'll have to boost their R&D substantially, but they're not there yet. Next question coming up. Which of these countries is ranked in the world's top 10 nations for high-tech exports? So it depends what you include, but they have a measure of exports have to have a high degree of technological components in them. So, yeah, Instinctive HE says was never going to be D because their GDP is really high. Well, they've got a high GDP, so even a small percentage of GDP implies a lot of R&D, doesn't it? Tommy. So, Tom Sparkle, one of our great contributors, is coming with B, C, D, and Matt Hardy, C and D. Which of these countries are in the top 10 in the world for high-tech exports? Some lovely to see some new people today. George has gone for C and D, Felix Mears, B, C, D, and Jack, A, B, C. Let's check. Let's see what comes up. A, B, D. Harsha, congratulations. You got that right. Absolutely brilliant answer. Well done. Japan is not in the top 10 for high-tech exports. In fact, what's happened with Japan? A lot of high-tech production has left Japan. A lot of Japanese multinational companies have decided to, partly because of deflation in Japan and 2 decades of slow growth. Jacob and George have come in with A, B, and D ahead of the answer, maybe. Still a good answer, though. Yeah, so a lot of Japanese high-tech exporting has actually been outsourced to Southeast Asia, to America. Now, third question is the hard one. Which of these universities were ranked in the top 10 globally in 2023? Now, this might relate. It might relate to something we talked about yesterday. So what do we think here? Which of these UK universities were ranked in the top 10 globally in 2023? London School of Economics, LSE, Imperial College London, the University of Edinburgh, and Cambridge University. What do we think? So Greg has gone for Cambridge and Imperial. What do we think? Millie says, where's Nottingham Trent? Well, it's in Nottingham, Millie. Sandy has gone for A and D. George says B and D plus Oxford, I think. So George has gone for B and D plus Oxford. Ellison Stack Bandit, one of our great contributors. LSE isn't even top 50 by QS somehow. Interesting point from Stack Bandit. What else have we got here? Somebody said, Sam says, tried to sneak into Edinburgh. Not always easy. Okay, here's the answers coming up. The answers are, Jack says, Geoff wouldn't turn an opportunity to get Cambridge in. Well, it is indeed B and D. Yeah. Aaron says, which university did you go to, Geoff? I went to Cambridge, Aaron, if you're asking, back in the day. And actually, here's a picture of my college, Clare College. By the way, I just want to make a point. I had a great time at uni. I met loads of people, and both the friends I made at university I've kept in touch with. Pigeon says, where's Oxford? Well, it's obviously at Oxford, but I'm not going to put Oxford on any screen on any of my presentations. It's a second-rate university by any measure. Okay, 3 past question, multiple choice questions, past exams. These are all from 2022 or 2023. So test yourselves on these. Which supply side measure is most likely to produce short-term growth in a country's aggregate supply? I like this question. Now, 3 questions here. Can you get all 3 right? Test yourself. Oh, sorry, George saying, Geoff, you're rubbing in the fact that Cambridge denied me. George, I apologise. But I'm sure you'll have a great time there as a master's student. Jacob says A. Ria says A. Dan the man says A. Daniela and Kate and Eldridge all saying A. George and Vidika and Sam. I think let's double check. It is indeed A. Yeah, so migration is one of those short-term supply-side policies. A lot of students in the exam, by the way, say supply-side policies have long time lags. Not necessarily. Migration can have a pretty immediate effect. Come on to that in a second. Next question. Which combination identifies a main aim of a supply-side policy and a measure used to achieve this target? Now, these next 2 questions, all 3 of them are past questions from 2022, 2023, including CIE and other examples. So this is a great question. Angus and Alice, Kate and Clem have all got the right answer. Let's double check. Well done to you. A, yeah, growth driven by deregulation. If you're a believer in free markets, that's the answer. Good stuff. Well done. And the final question, which combination of macro policies will be most likely successful if the aim were to reduce unemployment and reduce inflation? In other words, shift the Phillips curve down and to the left. Which combination of policies would be most successful if the aim were to reduce unemployment and reduce inflation, achieve an improvement in the macro objectives, both of them? Again, this was a 2023 question, and there's some good questions being asked at the moment in terms of testing people's knowledge. Now we're getting a difference of opinion here. You want to reduce unemployment and cut inflation. Adode and Reese, Lucas and Angus, Freddie and Sam, and Vidika all have the right answer, I think. So well done to you. Here it is. Yeah, supply-side policies to improve labour mobility and reduce indirect taxes help to bring down inflation. Excellent stuff. Really good. Quite a few chose D there, of course, because that would cause inflation. If you depreciate the exchange rate, inflation goes up. Okay, over to you. Team economics. Here we go. Let's crack on with some supply side. Can you just give me 3 factors, please, that affect long-run aggregate supply? Over to you. So thinking about long and aggregate supply, the LRAS curve, Keynesian curve, or the neoclassical curve, what are choose 3 really important factors that drive aggregate supply? And again, the more detail, the better. And we'll showcase some of the best answers on the screen. Yep, all good stuff. Not easy in a minute, by the way, so don't worry about writing long sentences. We're just trying to capture the essence. Ellie has a lovely point there. Human capital comes into her answer. I'll have something to say about education in a second, Matt. I think there's a nice way of improving, just making the answers slightly more detailed. G9. One of our great contributors, labour productivity, availability of resources, and how advanced technology is. Don't know the word for that. Well, I would call it cutting edge technology, or technology at the cutting edge. By the way, I've just bought myself a new garden strimmer, and it's the absolute latest garden strimmer. It is cutting edge technology, no question about it. Sophie talks about investment in R&D, improved education. Now, I want to talk about education in a second here. We've got to be very specific here. And investment in infrastructure. Now, crucially, can I just hold on Sophie's answer there? R&D, brilliant. Education, fine. Infrastructure, fine. The real key when you get a question on supply side is to go one level below and give me an example. So what type of education? What type of infrastructure? R&D in which industries? So Sophie's got 3 really good points there. To make it great points, you then give some detail. So if I look at my answers here coming through, well, I haven't chosen to. Productivity of labour and capital. Factory efficiency, obviously you need to output per hour, you need a growing population and increased labour market participation. We'll talk about that today. Innovation and enterprise, you need small, entrepreneurship, you need product to process innovation, you need a high level of net capital investment, which is gross investment minus depreciation, and increasingly, of course, sustainable growth, long and aggregate supply. Can you find, exploit, extract, and protect your stock of natural capital? So productivity, labour supply, innovation and enterprise, the capital stock and natural resources. Okay, all good stuff. We're going to look at I've chosen a couple of topical areas. If it's okay with you, just for 2 minutes, can I work through some of the key data on the UK? So supply side questions, hugely popular in the exam. If you have a little bit of knowledge, and this slide gives you it, then you can get a long way in the exam. You can impress the heck out of an examiner. So the World Economic Forum publishes competitiveness rankings. It's peer reviewed. It's based on a range of indicators. We were 23rd in 2022. We dropped to 29th last year, 29th on the competitiveness rankings, mainly because of the high inflation and the rising fiscal deficits. There's something called PISA. This is the sort of education test scores, standardized tests for education in maths and languages and science. We came 14th in 2022, which is okay. It was 1 place higher than the year before. Singapore and Taiwan are top. Freddie says, no way is the UK 4th for productivity. Well, we are the 4th in G7 for productivity. There's obviously only 7 countries. Many other countries have higher productivity. I'll give you some data on that in a second, Freddie. Germany and the United States ahead. We have a very low investment share of GDP. Again, I've got a chart for that in a second. It's only 17% of GDP, below the average. Our R&D has gone up. It's now just below 3% of GDP, in part because of changing the way that we measure R&D. We now include more intangible R&D. I'll take you through some charts in a second. People are asking, what does this mean? And we'll look at some examples. R&D is basically research and development. So in pharmaceuticals, we're researching new drugs, new treatments. We run a current account deficit of just over 3% of GDP, £90 billion. Now that is what I call reveal preference. The trade data tells you whether you're competitive enough. Really importantly, 22% of the population of working age is economically inactive. That's 9.25 million people of working age are not active in the labour market. And we built 233 houses last year. I think, well, that's micro, and that's not. That's macro, because it's the whole UK. It's 100,000 below our target. And we are going to look at 7 and 8 in a few minutes when we think about policies, supply side policies. So the UK does well on certain things. R&D's got much better. Our relative productivity is not miles off. Let me just take you through a bit of data here. So if it's okay with you, I just want to spend 3 or 4 minutes just giving you some background on supply side performance of the UK. This is kind of really good stuff for 25 markers. You obviously have to use the data in the extracts, but if you have a little extra knowledge, it makes a difference. So here's our latest rankings from the WF, with 29th overall. Better on infrastructure, pretty good on things like financial services, but not great. We're not in the top 20 in the world now. Used to be. The next slide shows the productivity slowdown. Somebody said, well, what's happened to productivity? And of course, what's happened is that the productivity growth has slowed right down, particularly since 2008. Now, this chart shows GDP per hour with 2008 as 100. That's your base level. And it's taken from a new publication by John Van Reenen, published by the LSE. And it does show that had productivity continued to grow at the rate, the pre-crisis trend, it'd now be 24% higher than we are now. So productivity, that's a great line for the exams, by the way. Had productivity grown at the same rate before the financial crisis, GDP per hour, and essentially GDP per head, will be about 1/5 or 1/4 higher. Okay? So low productivity slowdown, in part, the next slide shows why. sorry, it shows more evidence. This is relative productivity. This is output per worker relative to the UK. So keep in mind, this is the kind of data you often get in exams. So this data shows whatever UK productivity is, the other countries are percentage different. So Japan's basically the same as the UK. Canada a bit ahead of us. France and the United States much well ahead. This is output per worker. Okay. And linked to it is investment. Now this chart I think is super important. So this chart shows the share of investment in GDP, both public and private. And you can see the red line is the UK, or the orange line. And for many, many years, we have been at or below the bottom of the G7 average. Somewhere between 15 and 20% of GDP, now 17%, which is well below other industrialized countries. And critically, well below the likes of South Korea, India, obviously China. China's above 40%. So decades of underinvestment is a chronic supply side issue. And then linked to that, on the next slide shows inactivity. I'm going to focus on that in a second. I'm going to ask you some questions on this. But a decade's worth of progress in reducing inactivity from 24% down to about 20% has been reversed in the last 3 or 4 years. Some of it linked to the pandemic, not all of it though. Keep that in mind, by the way. We've got nearly 9.5 million people of working age in this country who are not active in the labour market, just over 21%. And the next slide is house building, I think. Yeah, so the forecast, the government has a target of 300,000 homes every year. That's just for England. Add in Scotland and Wales, obviously in Northern Ireland, you get to 340. Okay, but persistently, year on year, although there's ups and downs, house building lies below forecast. This is net additions to the housing stock. So the evidence is we need to build at least a net 300,000 every year, because obviously some houses get demolished and some get unusable. So we need to be building probably 350,000 to add 300,000 to the housing stock. So we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay. So I just thought I'd spend a few minutes, if it was okay with you, just talking you through some of the supply side data for the UK. The other one I just wanted to show was work visas. This is unbelievably interesting. So obviously the government, we left the European Union in the end of 2020. So we ended free movement, and we've replaced it with a skilled work visa system and also a shortage occupation system. And there are all kinds of different gradients now. You need to earn a certain amount of money. The government's just said you can't, if you're a skilled care worker, for example, you can't bring your family with you. Interesting decision. But the number of visas issued last year was just under 500,000. 500,000. So this is a response to the labour shortages in 21-22, and obviously there's a significant need for skilled labour. So work visas can have quite a powerful short-term effect. Okay, back to you as a group. You need to know the distinction between a free market supply side policy and an interventionist policy. So let's do a quick revision on this. Can you please give me 2 of your best examples of free market supply side policies? Over to you. I thought I'd just spend a bit of time there working through some supply side data with you. Hopefully at the end of this session, you'll have just a really good application and context ready for the exam, whatever supply side comes up. So choose 2 free market, or sometimes called pro market, supply side policies. Good answer there from Sam. And River W1 comes in, privatization and union reforms. Good. Keep an eye on the chat when everybody as the answers come through. As always, some superb stuff. Liam's got a nice point in there. Faye, incentives to work. Anna suggesting reforming the labour market, so reducing the minimum wage, which I think is here to stay. And TGM talks about reducing red tape, reducing trade barriers. I like that answer, by the way. That's got a nice international flavour to it. Here's Liam's answer. Liam Sanderson. Deregulation of the Greenbelt land around the UK, so it's encouraging investment into infrastructure. Removal of migration rules, allowing greater quantity of labour. Some good stuff there. A lot of you talking about lower taxes, lower corporation tax. Freddie says corporation tax was cut from 20 to 19% in 2022. Well, of course, it's now gone back up to 25% since that famous 2022 budget, which didn't last long, really, did it? Didn't last as long as the lettuce. Evan talking about welfare reforms, incentivize work, increase the labour supply. Yeah, some good answers coming through. So free market policies, yeah. So essentially, I'll give you lots of examples in a second or two. But free market is basically a shift towards less government, less state intervention, and more towards the kind of market approach. So deregulation, such as telecoms, postal services, the energy sector. Of course, we've seen lots of that in recent times. So lots of new telecoms providers, lots of new parcel companies, new entrants into the energy sector. So the aim is to attract new entrants, enhance contestability, bit of a micro term there, increase investment and drive productivity. Now, please note, deregulation is not the same as privatization. Privatization is the change of ownership from state to private. You can deregulate without changing ownership. The post office, the Royal Mail, faced deregulation well before it was privatized. And a lot of people talking about flexibility in the labour markets are promoting zero-hours contracts, open migration, flexible job contracts. Now, I've put there in the past, this might have included laws governing trade unions. My strong advice, by the way, to everybody in this live stream, those watching on catch-up, is not to talk about union reforms, quite honestly. And please don't mention Margaret Thatcher. God rest her soul. You know, what happened in the 1980s and the 1990s was 30, 40 years ago. The examiners are expecting from you a much more contemporary awareness, which hopefully this session will help. So please don't... Sorry, Nail's got to go. He's going to catch up later. Can we just say goodbye to Nail, please? But thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. And you're going to get some love in the chat window. Teddy says that Thatcher was the best prime minister in recent history. Depends what your definition of recent is, Teddy, of course. But she certainly made a big difference to a lot of people's lives. Okay, so free market policies, great stuff. Yeah, what have we got there? So quite a few mentioned tax cuts, both personal and corporate taxes. That will be free market policy. Getting rid of red tape, bureaucracy, privatization and liberalization of markets. Other key things, free trade. If you're a believer in trade liberalization, that's a supply side policy. So if you open up markets to trade, get rid of tariffs and quotas, allow capital mobility across borders, those would be free market policies. Max says contestability is in micro Edexcel. Well, here's the point, Max. Thank you for making that point, by the way, Max Booker. Most macroeconomics have micro foundations, and most supply side policies operate at a micro level. And if they're sufficiently successful, they have a macro effect. So if you can make markets more contestable, that's a micro aspect, but it has a macro consequence, especially if everybody faces cheaper prices. Okay, moving on, can we now give me 2 examples of interventionist supply side policies? Have a go. So what do we think? Interventionist supply side policies. Yeah. A question there about supply side reforms in Argentina. It's probably too early to tell, but obviously we've got a free market economist elected in Argentina. Somebody asked me the other day, what have been the main economic consequences of the French Revolution in the 18th century? And I said, it's just too early to tell, really. Okay, Pigeon comes in, one of our great contributors, regional policy. Yes, levelling up would be interventionist. Excellent. Minimum maximum wages. Gregor talking about healthcare investment to reduce the long-term sick, economic inactivity. Great stuff. West talks about activist regional policy. The snack bandits, subsidies for R&D, infrastructure investment. Yeah, you're getting the idea here. So this is interventionist approaches as opposed to free market. Now, there's obviously some overlap between the two. Daisy, some great points there. Training schemes, social housing. Nationalisation can be seen as a supply side policy. Policies to reduce poverty, investment in infrastructure. You've got a fantastic hold there. Jacob talking about levelling up, investment in transport infrastructure, subsidies for infirm training. So Daisy and Jacob's 2 contributions there, absolutely superb. You've got that kind of depth there. Victor talking about government spending on infrastructure, subsidies to firms to lower average costs. Really good. George talking about subsidies to keep industries alive, such as the steel industry. recently highlighted by Janet Yellen. Very interesting. So the chips that Biden's policies are very interventionist. He's brought in the US Recovery Act and things. Well worth checking out Bidenomics for some good interventionist approaches there. Wow, superb answers. I've gone for minimum wages. So I would argue minimum wage is a supply side policy because it's designed to stimulate active labour supply, improve work incentives, and hopefully over time raise productivity. Others say it isn't. Others say that we should move away from minimum wage, but I personally believe in it. Always have done and always will. And things like state subsidies, so state funded help for nursery early years education, affordable housing, funding for renewables, funding for apprenticeships, financial support for students taking degrees from low-income families. The list goes on, doesn't it? So, but essentially they're moving away from the free market there to bring in a form of intervention. Superb stuff. Martin says tariffs aren't a supply-side policy. Well, they can be seen as an interventionist supply-side policy, particularly if you're trying to promote supply and investment and jobs in a protected industry. So that's fine. In the same way that trade liberalisation will be free market supply-side policy. You believe in free trade. Okay, moving on. Almost there, everybody. This is a really important point. Super important. And hopefully this last 3 or 4 minutes will give you a feel for this. Please, if you get a question on SSPs, people like SSP questions. They're really good to get stuck into. But please avoid generic answers. So a lot of people write, the government could spend more on education and training. Of course it could. But you need to be more specific than that. What type of education? What type of training? So the more detail, if you like, the more granular detail, the better. Okay, that opens the door for A and A star evaluation, because you can then calibrate and say, well, one policy might be better in the short term, one policy might be better in the long term. So please don't just, 2 things. First of all, please don't say the answer is the government spends more on education. And secondly, please don't say problem with SSPs is time lags. It's so passé. It's a bit like Grimsby Town. It's just not exciting. I wouldn't pay to watch it. Certainly wouldn't pay to market. Okay. So with that in mind, let's take 2 questions to finish with. We know that the UK needs to build more homes. Okay. Can you give me 2 supply side policies that might increase the long-term rate of new house building in the UK? Over to you. Have a go. Can you make it as specific as possible in the next minute? Even if you have to think of one policy. SSPs, supply side policies. Yeah. So Kieran's come in. Builder apprenticeship schemes. Can we build on that answer, please? So we're looking to lift the rate of new house building. Jack's got a nice point about red tape for planning permission. So reforming planning. Good. Yeah, apprenticeships within construction. The more detail, the better. Some good answers coming through. Yeah, really good stuff. By the way, it's not always easy to write an answer in a minute. We appreciate that. And oftentimes in the next 15, 20 seconds, some even better answers will start coming through the chat window, as they're already doing now. So we'll try and pick up on a couple of them. Liam talking about subsidies such as the Affordable Homes Scheme, reduce red tape around the green belt. Some really good stuff. A lot of you talking about apprenticeships, which is excellent, particularly if you link it to building. So apprenticeships for what? For engineering, for surveying, for construction work, that kind of stuff. Jacob, interestingly, talking about reducing VAT on buying farmland to allow firms more cheaply to invest in land and construct housing. Reduces costs. A really good point, linking VAT as a fiscal supply side policy. Okay, if the aim is to increase supply, so it's any policy that increases supply can be counted as a supply side policy. Wow, the answers keep flying through. Some great answers coming in. Here are mine. Planning reforms. Yeah, so cutting bureaucracy, making more land available for new housing. Trying to overcome NIMBYism. NIMBYism, not in my backyard. As I look out of my window now, I can see some new houses being built. And there's been some local objections. I don't personally object to new houses being built because I'm an economist. Fiscal supply side policies, tax breaks, subsidies, grants. So take away VAT on building materials, take away VAT on developments on brownfield land, or conversely, tax undeveloped land where housing permission is being given. A lot of businesses buy the land, get the permission, and then don't build. So maybe a land tax. Loads and loads. Okay, Peter says, Geoff, what are some good evaluation points for SSPs that are not about opportunity cost and time lapse? Well, I will go through them in a second. Okay. Last question today, everybody. Amazing numbers in the group. Now, here we go. Here's a challenge for you. Supply side policies that might reduce inactivity in the labour market. Try to give one short-term and one long-term policy and try to be specific. 1 minute to finish off with. Over to you. You absolutely smashed the housing question. We've got 9.5 million people who are inactive, they're of working age, but not active in the labour market. It's a barrier to growth. It limits our aggregate supply. So what policies might reduce inactivity? Keep in mind there, Zach, that the unemployed are not inactive. So cutting benefits doesn't reduce inactivity because the unemployed are not part of the inactive. Unemployed are actively looking for work. So Payne the Goat, one of our great contributors, comes in with that point there. Michael. I like Michael's point. I'll talk you through some answers in a minute. Zach says, my bad, Geoff. Thank you for correcting me. Well, that's fine. It's always good. By the way, I once ordered on Amazon 300 bottles of Tipex. That was a big mistake. So Ben Richards, short-term allow greater migration, long-term investment in healthcare. So the 9 million that are economically inactive, 3 million of them are health-related. Ben, that is exactly the type of answer I'm looking for. Exactly the type of answer. You're making a distinction between short-term and long-term supply-side policies. It invites really good evaluation because you can then say, well, you know, what's the cost of how much are we going to have to spend on health and social care? Grace talks about investment in treatments to cure chronic health conditions, long COVID. Absolutely. And of course, you know, George says, Geoff, surely you could return some of that Tipex. That's true, actually. Yeah. George, is your middle name Tipex, by the way? Correct me if I'm wrong. And what else have we got coming through? Oh yeah, Houston talking about 4-day working week. Okay, talking about that to boost productivity. Okay, so improved worker motivation and productivity. Pigeon says Geoff getting in bulk buying economies of scale with the Tipex. That's absolutely true, by the way, but it was a big mistake. Some really good answers. Wow, that's unbelievable. Can I share my thoughts with you because I'm conscious of time here? This is my final slide today, by the way. If you want to take a screenshot, feel free. So short-term policies, maybe increasing the minimum wage above £11.44, maybe moving towards £12 or even higher to encourage more students, for example, to work part-time as well as study, or get more people to make work pay, to reduce working poverty. A rise in income tax-free allowances. I thought some of you might say, well, should we have an income tax-free allowance of £15,000 or £20,000 to get people to look for work? Subsidies for childcare costs. The government's offering tax-free childcare, but often we don't have the supply side capability at the moment. Something that affects me, tax relief on pension contributions for over 50s. Many of the over 50s have retired early. And if they start working again, they start paying a lot of tax on their pensions. Expansion of the work visa program. So hopefully you can see here that there are some short-term policies that might make a difference within a year or two, possibly. Whereas longer term supply side policies have a longer gestation policy. So, and I've used the word investment in all three examples. Investment in preventative health services to reduce chronic illness. I think Grace mentioned long COVID. Investment in transport and telecoms infrastructure to improve mobility of labour. It'll have more people to work from home, for example, 4-day working week. An investment in human capital, so STEM education, further education, degree apprenticeships, and back to work programs for the long-term discouraged workers. What am I saying here? it's a nice evaluation point. It's a neat point to say, well, actually, not every supply side policy takes a decade to kick in. Sometimes you need a mix of policies operating at a micro level to change incentives to grow the labour supply. Sometimes it's short term within a year, not really. It's within a cycle. Okay, valuation points. Yeah, so with free market policies, for example, what's the consequences for inequality? So if you cut tax rates at the top end, what are the consequences for income and wealth inequality? If you subsidise childcare, who's going to pay for that? And critically, are there enough childcare companies that can make a profit to provide the services? So we're finding, for example, that there's just excess demand for nursery places because the government's offered the tax incentive, but the nurseries, many of them are closing down. They can't afford and they can't expand. There's an elasticity problem. So oftentimes with SSPs, there's an opportunity cost, true, but the opportunity cost is the fiscal cost and also the distributional consequences. What you really need, if you can take Peter's point away there, please, what you really need with the supply side is a competitive microeconomy. You need businesses, you need startups, you need an ecosystem that promotes innovation and efficiency and dynamism in the economy. And some countries have it. South Korea, the Netherlands, increasingly countries like Mexico have a very dynamic and diversified industrial base. And it shows through. In the UK, we can't even fill the potholes in the roads. We have millions on the NHS waiting lists. Okay, our supply side is held back by a chronic lack of public investment, in my opinion. But I'm just an old-fashioned Cambridge economist. Well done, everybody. Wow, hopefully you found that useful today. If you did, press the like button. If you didn't find it useful, then just press the like button on the way out. There is so much to cover on the supply side, isn't there? A huge amount to cover. And hopefully we've given lots of application. The answers in the chat window are just different level, different gravy. And I like gravy, okay? They are a fantastic quality answer. Now, join us tomorrow. I think tomorrow we're doing contestable markets and then poverty and inequality. Matthew says, will there be more live streams after? So we're going to carry on, Matthew, every day, all the way through. Next week, the week after. Yes, next 2 weeks for sure. Is that right? Yes, I think so. The week after, the Monday the 23rd, of course, we're down in London. So I'll do one on a Monday, and then we have 4 dates live in London, the Great Booster course. And then we crack on. We crack on in the first 2 weeks of May. We'll be doing daily live streams on key topics. So that's all something to look forward to. And I really enjoy doing them, by the way, because they're a great group and an expanding community of students. Fantastic to be with you. So take care, stay safe, stay positive, stay healthy, stay happy, and see you sometime soon.